Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to another edition of The Right Way Wednesday. Today, I am going to do something a little bit different. I talk about LCDs or local coverage determinations a lot, and I do mean a lot. And I know that if you have been around for a while on the page, you now know what that is if you didn't already. And hopefully, because I talk about it as much as I do, you have gone to review your LCD if you haven't in a while. I wanted to pull up because LCDs are so important, just like our state practice acts, all of the Medicare and other payer manuals, knowing what is in those manuals, what is in your LCD, what is in your state practice act is just vital for good service delivery. We have to understand what's in them. We have this handy dandy tool. You can find it in the file section of this page, or if you are a Health Pro Heritage clinician, you have the ability to get to it on Box or your iPads. If you don't know how to do that, please ask today. But it is our quick links to your national and local coverage determinations so that you can review them anytime you want, and you can go take a look at yours today. Now, your local coverage determinations are geographic by region. You should, though, check if you have a corporate affiliation and your building may have, or you might be billing under a local coverage determination that is outside your geographical region. It's not as common, but it does happen. So you should just double check with your business office manager as to who your MAC is, and that's what you want to ask for. Your MAC, your Medicare Administrative Contractor. You'll see that those are listed over here on the far left of this tool. So all of the MACs, as well as the geographic location that they cover, are listed right here. You can get to the general index of LCDs, so you can look at those because there are more LCDs that we might want to review. Sometimes MACs have specific LCDs regarding certain modalities like eSTEM, those kinds of things. So you just want to kind of review and make sure that there aren't any others that might apply to you. That some of them will also have something called a non-covered LCD, and it'll list all of the services that they have determined not to be medically necessary and are not going to pay for. I'll just make this a little bit bigger for you. So I just wanted to do a quick tutorial of what's in an LCD because we did a poll question not too long ago. And if you haven't taken our polls, please do. We really do want to know what you're thinking. We are not using anyone's name, anything like that. We're really just gathering some numbers to help us, number one, identify tools that you guys need in the field that would help benefit you, maybe revise our current tools to better help you, look at revising or developing additional education for our clinicians, and just all kinds of great information that we need in order to help you do what you need to do on a daily basis. But we had a poll about the LCDs, and a lot of you, or a lot of people who have answered that poll so far, weren't even really sure what an LCD was, or it had been a while since they had seen one. And we do get a lot of questions still about what an LCD is when we bring that up. So let's do a quick tutorial. Hopefully this won't take too long. This one might be a little bit longer than normal, but bear with me because I think it's so important. So here's what you do. So if you get to this tool here, you can just click on any one of these links and it will take you. So I'm just going to pull up this PT and OT link. It's opened up on my other screen. So I'm going to pull that over. The first thing you might see is that it's going to ask you to agree to the license agreement. This will happen on all of your LCDs every time you go into it, or almost every time. You accept that. Now, those links on the far right should take you right to that particular therapy service LCD, and you'll see CGS has one combined for physical and occupational therapy services, and the LCD number is right here. You can download a PDF to keep on your computer, but because they're so easy to get to, you don't even really need to do that. I wouldn't recommend trying to print them because sometimes they print out in many pages, and again, because they're so easily accessed on the web, you really don't need to do that. There's some general coverage guidance, and all of your LCDs will have something like this. Some of it, some LCDs, some MACs provide more information than others, so you should know that. Just because a MAC does not provide guidance about specific CPT codes, doesn't mean they will or will not pay for those. It doesn't mean they do or do not have particular limitations or guidelines surrounding those codes. It just means, unfortunately, they haven't included it on the LCD. So it's still your responsibility as a clinician, if you're in one of those areas with one of those MACs that doesn't provide as much guidance, to go find that out through other venues. You can go to your state practice acts again. You can check out another LCD that might be more detailed and get some additional information as well, sometimes that way too. So just know that. All right, a lot of them give some general guidelines around medical necessity, what's considered skilled versus non-skilled. You'll see there is a lot of information about that. This is what we talk about a lot in our tools. The language we use in our tools comes directly from these regulations and guidelines as well as others. It talks about who sometimes should be providing outpatient and therapy services and who's not. I will also note that you will see this term outpatient on the LCD a lot. I will say though that these guidelines go across payers. So whether it's Part A, Part B, outpatient or SNF, you're going to want to follow these guidelines when you're looking at documentation and billing appropriately. Okay. So it talks about some general information. And then a lot of our MACs, LCDs, contain specific information about each CPT code, all right, that they allow. And you'll see they give some general information. They talk about, in this case, OT and PT evaluation codes, the difference between a screen and evaluation. There are documentation requirements as well. And you'll see there's another section later on. Sometimes they'll refer to other sections, and you'll see that here. You'll see there's the reevaluation code. Then goes into modalities. It gives you some general information and then breaks it down by CPT code as well. Okay. You'll want to pay close attention. Let's just pull out this paraffin bath therapy here. It talks about what's considered skilled versus non-skilled. This particular code does have some very specific guidance about when it's skilled versus when it's not. It has some limitations, quote unquote limitations, because it doesn't mean this statement, documentation needs to support more than 2 visits to educate patient or caregiver. That means that as a general rule, continued use of paraffin bath as a skilled treatment is not necessarily skilled in nature unless there is some other complex medical reason why a therapist needs to be providing that treatment. And if there is, you can do that. You just need to document it, and it needs to make sense based on these guidelines here. And if you do that, then you should be okay and you should be good. So these are just guidelines to let a clinician know what's covered and what's not. And it goes through, I'm going to scroll through this kind of quickly, so it might look a little weird as I'm going through, but you'll see it covers all kinds of information. CGS is actually pretty detailed. It's a great place to go to get information about individual CPT codes. It talks about group therapy, in this case, cognitive skills development, sensory education, all kinds of codes. They're usually listed in numerical order, so that'll make it easy for you to find. Generally, that's how they're listed on these LCDs. Okay, again, it lists supported documentation, requirements, and recommendations. Pay close attention to what they say about that. And listen, just because it says recommendations doesn't mean you don't have to put it in there, because if your documentation is reviewed and you don't have this information, they can deny it because you did not provide enough information to show why a service was skilled. All right, I'm going to scroll kind of quickly down here to show you some other information real quick on what's on here. You'll see there's some general coding information. So there's some billing type things that you don't necessarily need to know about, but payers, excuse me, are the providers who are billing for those services do. So it gives revenue codes and billing information as well. It talks, a lot of our LCDs contain, or most of them should contain a CPT or HCPCS code list. Sometimes it'll be what they consider not medically necessary, but typically they'll list all of the ones that they do consider medically necessary. So you'll see that list there. Sometimes they have a list of ICD-10 codes that support medical necessity. CGS does not have one of those. You have to, again, we talk about this a lot, using the tabular and alphabetical to code our treatment diagnoses, make sure they're specific as possible and per those guidelines. This one does have ICD-10 codes that do not support medical necessity. So if you're looking at using a treatment diagnosis for your plan of care and you're not sure, or even if you think you're sure, you might want to check it against this list. So if it's on this list, it is not going to support the medical necessity of our services. We need to try to find something better. All right, and there are a lot of those codes, and you'll see in this case, there are 439 entries. They are all listed in alphabetical and numerical order, and all you got to do is scroll through the pages to find them. Then you'll find generally some general information associated with that LCD, and this one includes just some additional information about some specific CPT codes, including the evaluation, and then documentation guidelines. And you see this is pretty detailed. So all of our tools, our evaluation guides, our UPOC guides, our daily treatment guides, they all come from these LCDs. We pull all the information that we can from them about what's required, and that's what we put on those, and add best practices as well. Again, because just because you only put the bare minimum that's required, it doesn't mean it's going to get paid. Sometimes they want more. All right. So again, just gives you some additional information about documentation. In this case, it talks about untimed and timed CPT codes and even gives some examples. So this is a great detailed LCD. All right. And then it gives some resources as well. At the end, you'll see some revision history information. They do revise these periodically. If for some reason you grab a link from this tool and it doesn't work, it just means they've revised it. Typically, revisions can be as simple as they fixed some typos, they added a couple of CPT codes, maybe something just little where semantically they changed some wording just to make it more clear. Sometimes there are bigger changes though as well, so you need to be aware of those too. All right. And it talks about that. So that's the CGS LCD. Just to give you something, I'll just pull up a Palmetto. How about a speech language pathology LCD? Okay, now I've already agreed to the license agreement. I'm just going to pull that back over here, so they're not going to make me do that again. All right, it takes me right to the LCD again. And then again, this one's set up, you'll see, in a similar way. It looks slightly different, but it's similar. It gives you general coverage guidelines, what's considered skilled versus not, what's considered restorative versus rehabilitative or maintenance, and then it goes into some specific guidance about specific CPT codes. Okay. After that, just like the CGS, it provides some general coding information, revenue codes, HCPCS CPT codes that are acceptable and supported medically. And then this one does include, Palmetto does include ICD-10 codes that support medical necessity, again, so that you can go through and make sure that you are coding in the best possible way based on your patient's needs, and that it's going to support medical necessity of the services that you're delivering and the CPT codes that you're billing. This one also provides some general guidance and a revision history. All right. So thank you so much for your time today. Hopefully you learned a little something today. We appreciate your time. Go check this tool out. Go to your LCD. Let us know if you have any questions in the comments below, and happy documenting.